अभी जैसे शादी में जाने का है तो हम लोग गाड़ी लेके जाते हैं, राइट? बाइक पे नहीं जाते, करेक्ट? इट वाज द अदर वे अराउंड. So when people had to show their status abroad, they would ride. Lifting up a heavy motorcycle is not something
It's
which
painful.
you want to do in that altitude, right? So the lighter
Absolutely.
your bike, the lighter the bike, the better you are.
Yeah.
In case of a fall, I am a Royal Enfield person.
Right.
तो मुझे तो Himalayan चाहिए.
Right.
You might say that Himalayan is not my cup of tea. कब क्या होगा कुछ ठिकाना नहीं. I want a KTM.
Yeah.
So first movers will have bikes, small numbers. But what happens when they replace that?
Right.
Is what we need to see.
But there are two other bikes I want to ask you about your opinion on them. One is the SD Adventure,
Ah, okay.
and the other one is the Triumph Scrambler 400X.
I entered the showroom and nobody came. Like I could have been a customer. Abhinav, I have had the most sublime ride on Africa Twin. That DCT is a game changer. I don't know why would I need a gearbox
Right.
when I'm riding around open highways.
Right.
A DCT takes care of everything.
Right.
Hello and welcome to Connecting Rod, your one-stop destination for everything automotive. And today with me is Abhinav Jakar. And when Abhinav and I are on a podcast, we need to talk motorcycles.
Yes.
So what are we talking about, Abhinav, today?
I thought we'll touch on the topic of ADVs because it's such a growing market in our country. And I thought best to get your thoughts first about how this whole ADV thing and this off-road thing came about, because you are a
Old.
custodian of history.
Old, you can say old. Yes, Dipayan is not there, but you can definitely say that.
But yeah, where did it begin?
So, the ADV culture in India is a very recent development. Let me put it that way.
Right.
The spike in ADVs and all that is a very recent development. Where it all started was many years back when Bajaj actually launched a bike called the SX Enduro.
Yeah.
Now, the SX Enduro was essentially a street bike. It was a KB 125, which was made to look like a on-off-road bike.
It was quite a different looking bike for that time. It looked very unique.
Yes, it looked very unique because it had those raised mudguards, a very high position headlamp, and although the rear suspension was identical more or less, give it a little bit of more travel, and the front suspension as well, it was essentially a KB 125.
Right.
So, of course, in those days, most of the Indian manufacturers never had the kind of R&D and stuff which was required to develop something like a true adventure or a dirt bike.
I think the term only at that time was very loose. Like
it was there. It was there in Europe because the GS, the BMW GS, has been has been one of the favorite adventure bikes around the world for years now, actually decades now. So at that point of time, motorcycling in India was limited to 100cc motorcycles.
Right.
And you have to understand why. It was the time when the two strokes were gradually coming to an end, and the four-stroke bikes were taking over.
But, during that time, there were a lot of, like the photos that I see of there are a lot of these people who've taken the SDs, put knobby tires on it and raised the suspension and taking it sort of, for, trail riding or competitions of that sort.
Correct. So that's what it was. We never got purpose-built on-off-road motorcycles.
Right.
But the Kida was always there among people, right? So what is the most common thing which you need when you're riding on Kichad or any of these places? Basically, you need tires which will grip. And you need to remove the mudguards because all this Kichad and all that will get stuck there and your wheel will get stuck. So they would remove the mudguard, but to stop the splashes, they would buy a aftermarket plastic mudguard. And earlier days, even SDs and all that, they would just drill up the mudguard and fix it on top of the head.
Hence the beak. Right?
Hence the beak. So it was a very cheap solution to go off-road.
Right.
But was it effective? No. Actually, the first proper purpose-built ADV, well, I can't call it a proper ADV, but a genuine go-anywhere motorcycle was the BMW Funduro.
Yeah, the 650. Yeah.
650. And that is, I think, it was sold via Hero dealerships.
BMW had a tie-up with someone, for sure.
I think Hero. And at that point of time, there were no takers to the bike.
Yeah. It was a big bike.
It was a
that
big
time.
bike, and most importantly, even at that point of time, it was rather expensive.
Right.
When you would get a bike for $50,000, here is a bike in lakhs.
Right.
So people were like,
they weren't used to bikes that big. Yeah. Absolutely.
So again, goes back to the Indian culture, where a motorcycle is a commuter mainly at that point of time, as compared to Europe, where it has always been a luxury item.
Absolutely.
अभी जैसे शादी में जाने का है तो हम लोग गाड़ी लेके जाते हैं, राइट? बाइक पे नहीं जाते, करेक्ट? इट वाज द अदर वे अराउंड. सो व्हेन पीपल हैड टू शो देयर स्टेटस अब्रॉड, दे वुड राइड, because not everybody could have a GS,
right,
or one of these big bikes.
It was more associated with having fun.
Yes.
And sort of living the life of a rider than it being a sort of transport thing. Right?
Absolutely. And I think the game changer here came with a few motorcycles, which includes one Royal Enfield Himalayan.
That's what I was going to say. So there's the off-road part of the ADV, and then there's the touring part of the ADV, which, Royal Enfield was responsible for a lot of people going to Leh at that time in the beginning of it all.
Yes. So, see, time and again, people have been exploring.
Right.
And the Bullet 500 and later the Classic 500 became the bike of choice to go to Leh. Right. And that's where Royal Enfield capitalized and made their name.
Right.
कि भाई अगर ले जाना है तो Royal Enfield चाहिए.
Right.
And at that point of time, if you remember the Thunderbird and all these bikes which they made.
Even the Bullet, if you go back to just the Bullet 350, the cast iron ones or even the UC ones, people were taking them to that was like, that is big enough to handle it at, I'm talking years back. And when there was no ADV sort of market, there was no adventure touring market of sorts. Enfield ruled the roost over there. Like.
Correct. And even today, the if you ask any Royal Enfield buyer, whether he's buying a Bullet or a Classic or a Interceptor or whatever, if you ask them what is that one thing you want to do with your motorcycle,
it's that aspiration to go to places.
Right. Now, the company capitalized on this sentiment and created the Himalayan.
Yeah.
And that is why the name Himalayan came, because that was the bike for the Himalayas. Right. But what it also brought forward was the idea that adventure bikes were fantastic in the city as well.
Yeah.
Now, why are we talking about adventure bikes in city? Essentially because of the high ground clearance and the suspension, which was, a bike which is tuned to take on Himalayan roads, Ladakh roads.
It'll be great for our broken roads.
Potholes and waterlogging is not a problem for these motorcycles, I think
that switch happened when something like a Himalayan came about and people started to realize, I can, go somewhere close by, not worry about roads because of the race suspension, because of the seating position. So I think the Himalayan was a big
jump.
Yeah, like it was like a big marker in the whole entry of ADVs. Right. There have been a lot others also.
Yes.
We can talk about something like the KTM 390 Adventure.
Absolutely.
Now, the first 390 Adventure I always felt it was more of a road tourer rather than a adventure bike. But this one that's just come out, I think, it has, and this is going to be controversial, but I think it has the Himalayan licked in some sense, because the weight reduction and the weight rides and just the ease and the power that you have with it, I think the 390 Adventure in some ways pips the current generation Himalayan in my book. In
all of this, Abhinav, I want to talk about weight.
Yeah.
When you're riding these motorcycles around those roads, you will fall.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Lifting up a heavy motorcycle is not something
It's
which
painful.
you want to do in that altitude. Right? So the lighter your bike,
Yeah.
the lighter the bike, the better you are.
Yeah.
In case of a fall or anything, even a puncture for that matter. Now, such is the current scenario of the market that Indians are now taking a pick between road-going adventure tourists
Right.
and
More
off-roadability.
Correct.
Right? So you have the SX
Yeah.
thing in the KTMs.
KTMs, yeah.
And I think that's a fantastic differentiation.
Right.
Now,
I
most of the-
like that differentiation that they have. They have something that's more road friendly and have something that's more, adventure ready, which is a great distinction to have, because if people want something more specific, and that I've seen people are either in this side of the fence or on that side. There's no people do want a balance, but they rather have what they really want to have, and that the opening up of the ADV market and us having choices is what made that distinction even more clearer.
That's correct. That's correct.
When the Himalayan is more of a balance.
Yes, Himalayan, I think the kind of suspension and setup it has, I think it does a very good job of balancing it out.
Yeah.
Especially the new one. The
450.
bike is fast.
Yeah.
The bike has space. The suspension is excellent. Features are brilliant. The bike has space to load up your luggage and all of that.
Right.
But the one place where I think the Himalayan is a bit, you need to think about it, is the weight.
Yeah. The weight is...
That is where the KTM 390s come into
play.
action.
Yeah. Yeah.
And today, going forward, most of the manufacturers have a good service network.
Yeah. Yeah.
So service network is not something which most people will think about anymore.
Especially because, KTM being backed by Bajaj is...
Yes, absolutely.
Huge.
It's huge. Bajaj is everywhere.
Yeah.
Now say if you're in Manali, you will have a KTM showroom there.
For sure.
And then from there to Leh, well, there are no Royal Enfield showrooms also. On the way from Manali. Once you're out of Manali.
But the interesting thing is, we went to Leh recently, and still, the people who rent bikes there, they still have Himalayans. Which is...
It's a mindset.
It's a mindset.
Because there, you are not going fast. Okay? So once you leave from Manali and you are heading up, once you cross the Atal Tunnel,
Right.
basically, you are into the twisties.
Yeah. Now...
Around those twisties, you don't need the speed. You don't need the power. You need the torque.
Right.
Now the KTMs, even today, they are fast. But the power comes at a very high RPM.
They're not very torque heavy. Correct.
Correct me if I'm wrong. So
No,
even
fair.
today, although it's a retuned engine, it's the new 400, whatever. But the casualness with which you can ride the old Himalayan is something which people enjoy.
Right.
Because they don't want
Yeah.
the Himalayas to go out in a blur.
Fair.
Right?
Fair.
And
That's a
another
fair
reason
point.
is that the 390 Adventures, the new ones, have just come out.
Yeah.
So, since you were talking about renting the bikes, listen, these guys who have bought these bikes to be rent out, they will keep those bikes till some time before they sell it and change the fleet.
Fair.
Now, if the demand for the KTMs
Grows.
then of course, when they replace those Himalayans, they
could
will
be
be
390
replaced by
Adventures, yeah.
KTMs.
Yeah.
Right? So that is something which we need to see, that what are they doing.
Right.
अभी तो कुछ लोग KTM लगाएंगे because there are it's something which people let's put it this way कि भाई I am a Royal Enfield person.
Right.
तो मुझे तो Himalayan चाहिए.
Right.
You might say that Himalayan is not my cup of tea. कब
I
क्या
want
होगा
the
कुछ ठिकाना नहीं. I
390
want a
adventure.
KTM.
Yeah.
So first movers will have bikes, small numbers. But what happens when they replace that
Right.
is what we need to see.
I think let's go back, and what do you think is the starting point or the entry of the ADV market? Like, when do you think that, okay, now this market has started to sort of grow? What was that first bike that really... I have one in my head, but I'll let
Why
you
don't
go.
why don't you start? Because I know because I had one. So I know.
Okay, now I'll go. I know your
So
answer.
I think.
So I'll start. Okay, fine. For me, although it wasn't an ADV, it was more a dual purpose. It was the Hero Impulse. When I first saw the Impulse, it gave me that feeling that, okay, this is a bike that I can take anywhere I want. I'll go slowly. I won't go quickly. But the fact that it's a Hero Honda, it's a Hero...
No, it was a Hero Honda.
right?
It was a Hero Honda.
It was a Hero.
Correct.
It's a Hero Honda, so, service isn't
It
an
won't
issue.
break down and things like that.
So I was like, Impulse was that first, wo in my head, ki, okay, this is a bike that's going to, take me places. And that extends on to the X-Pulse also, because the X-Pulse is also a very sort of important motorcycle to speak about.
Very much.
In this. You also had an X-Pulse.
Yes, I had an X-Pulse. So, I totally agree with you when you said Impulse, because I bought one.
Oh, you had the Impulse also?
Yes, I had an Impulse. I had an Impulse again because that bike looked like it could do anything.
Yeah.
But the problem was the one time I rode it to not too far away, Dehradun.
Right.
I was bored because it would just go 100.
I mean, yeah.
And there is an
it's
arrow
not
straight
fast.
road.
Yeah.
And you are sitting at 100 and traffic is just blasting past you. And I thought, man, this needs that 225 charisma engine.
Yeah.
That's the
A lot of
only...
people did that also.
Oh, yeah. Our colleague at that point of time, Vikrant Singh from Car Wale, Bike Wale, he's editor there.
Right.
He had a charisma. And he did that engine transfer on his Impulse, and it made a huge difference. It actually gave us a first taster of how tasty that Impulse can become.
That chassis.
That chassis. That
ergonomics.
Oh my God, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Right? So when I sold my Impulse, it was because I found a motorcycle which could do it all.
Right.
Which was the Himalayan 411.
Right.
And even to this day, I don't know how I ended up buying that bike because the number of complaints which the Gen 1 Himalayan had, I was not convinced that I would buy that motorcycle.
Right.
But when they did the BS6 version, it was a completely different animal.
Right.
And I bought that bike and I rode it to various places. And the kind of comfort that bike used to give, I could sit at 100 kph all day long.
Right.
Okay, you are borderline top speed. Fuel efficiency goes for a toss, but you could do that.
Right.
And then when you get to those mountains and you have bad roads, you stick it to second gear and forget about it.
The first time that I went to Leh was on a 411 Himalayan, and the funny thing was it got it punctured twice before we reached Manali.
That's strange.
Which is very strange. And after that, not one foot wrong. Like it went from Manali to Leh without a hitch.
It was all fine till KTM launched the Adventures, the previous generation Adventures.
Right.
When the only major drawback of the Himalayan came out very glaring, which is the lack of top speed.
Lack of top speed, yeah.
Like, so if you are heading to anywhere, you have to cross highways.
Right.
Most of the highways these days, expressways especially, have a speed limit of 100, 120.
For sure.
Now, on those roads, it is very comfortable to sit at 100 or 120.
Right.
That is where the Himalayan lost out.
I mean, even if you look at the back roads, let's say if we don't talk about expressways, because some expressways don't allow, two-wheelers.
Yes.
So if you take the back roads also, the road infrastructure has improved enough
Massively.
for us to ride at like the speed limit of, let's say, 80 or 90.
Yeah.
And be comfortable. A lot of these bikes that were older, like let's if you're talking about the X-Pulse or even the older 411 Himalayan, they would sit at 80, 90, but...
No, the X-Pulse which I had, the 4-valve.
Yeah, 210.
The 4-valve, not the 210. The older one was a 200 if I'm not mistaken.
200, sorry, my bad.
X-Pulse 200. So the 200 also was a huge upgrade from the older version because when I went to ride the Expulse first, it was Nandi Hills,
Right.
if I'm not mistaken. Yes, Nandi Hills.
Right.
The problem which I faced was very odd. The amount of engine braking being offered was very weird. And by engine braking, I'm not saying that you shift your gear down.
Right.
Right? You're going fast at 80, 90. Okay? And the moment you let go of the throttle, the fall in the speed was very startling for me.
The ratio of the gears were probably not
90 to
optimized.
60. You let go, you are sitting at 60. I mean, it was straining the engine.
Right.
That problem got sorted out with the 4-valve.
Yeah.
So when you let go of the throttle, it would not sink.
Right.
It would come down to 90 and then you throttle up and you go.
And they have to be given massive care because I've ridden the new one.
Yes.
And honestly, it may not be a massive upgrade in terms of giving you a higher top speed and all that, but from an NVH level, from the way the technology that they've offered, it's got a very nice TFT screen and whatnot. It feels like such a nice upgrade over the 200. They're still selling the 200 alongside.
Yes.
But that 210 feels like, okay, I don't mind being bored on this bike. Like, some bikes you don't want to be bored on. And with the Expulse 200 to the new one, the 210, it feels a little more ADV-ish than it did before.
Okay.
The older one feels a little more dirt bike-ish. This one feels a little more ADV, which I really liked about it. Older Expulse also, you don't have to stop for speed breakers and all this.
Oh, yeah.
Just makes it even better, which they must be appreciated
for.
So
let's start by saying that if you're looking at a step-by-step graduation.
Let's talk about entry-level ADVs, like the more affordable ones.
Right. So I think the Expulse is a good starting point.
Yeah.
Because the pricing is right.
Yeah.
Now the other option you got is recently launched KTM Enduro.
Right.
Right? The Enduro, we have not ridden the Enduro as yet, unfortunately.
KTM.
Hello KTM. I don't know. Okay, let's not get there. But the Enduro is something which we are yet to ride. We've heard good reviews from people who have ridden the bike. And again, what comes as a very important factor is the weight.
Yeah.
Like for an everyday dirt bike on off-road, it's basically a dirt bike with number plates is what I hear from everybody.
I think that engine, the 390, the 399cc engine, will be perfect in the Enduro because I just, from a very character standpoint, those two sort of combinations of like engine characteristics and ergonomics that the Enduro has, I think they fit really well.
The other thing I want to talk about here is the seat height.
Right.
When I first saw the KTM at EICMA last year.
You're talking about the Enduro?
Both.
Yeah.
The Adventure and the Enduro.
Last year.
I was a bit startled because I am not too tall. I'm 5'5", 5'6", around thereabout. And for me, riding a tall motorcycle is quite a challenge.
Right.
You have ways to deal with it and I deal with it. But I was very surprised that, okay, KTM is bringing this bike into India and the seat height is really tall. But when KTM sent me a 390 Adventure recently to ride, I was surprised that the way the design has been done is absolutely brilliant.
Fantastic,
where your legs are coming down, basically, it's slim.
Yeah.
So although the seat height is tall, I didn't have a problem riding that bike at all.
Right.
So
even Dipayan was very impressed with it. I mean, he took a few rounds and he rode it around. He was like, I mean, the distribution of the weight and the fact that you could, he was doing a maneuver, an off-road maneuver where you circle around without putting your feet down. And he was able to do that so elegantly that he was like, this is great. Like, this is a very nice step in the right direction, especially because the older 390 Adventure was far from impressive. It was okay. I mean,
that bike is so impressive that one of our very senior colleagues have recently parted ways with a big ADV and bought a KTM 390 Adventure.
I mean, for most people who are into this, they probably know the answer to this already, who we're talking about.
Well, we are talking about Shubhabrata Marma, Shumi, as he's called. And congratulations, Shumi, on your new motorcycle. And I was asking him that what was the requirement. And what I gained out of it was, it is enough to have a 390 Adventure.
Yeah.
Or this middleweight.
Yeah.
Because what it's offering is enough for most purposes.
Yes.
And that little bit which is left out is not going to be such a big deal.
Yeah.
It's not going to be such a big deal breaker.
Right.
And this is coming from someone who has owned a big ADV, two big ADVs back to back.
One was the multi-star.
Both were multi-stars.
Both were multi-stars.
Yes,
Sorry.
both were multi-stars. And what and he's ridden the hell out of those two
He's a
motorcycles.
rider.
He's one of those guys who will ride anywhere.
Right.
I was talking to him once and he was riding from Bombay to Bengal for some marriage function on his multi-strada. And I think the first one was one of the most ridden multi-stradas in our country.
In our country, yeah.
We had done some 60,000 kilometers or something like that, which is a heck of a lot of a riding.
No, he's a legend for sure.
So
he's
it's very. It came to me as a surprise because when I saw his post that the multi-strada is going now, I thought he will upgrade to something
that's
equivalent, if not bigger. And when I saw what he bought, I was like, okay.
And that's a big, for anybody who follows him or whatever, that's a big
Statement.
That's a lot of faith being put in something and true belief being put
And he's a
into
fast rider. I mean, he's one of the best in business, and I believe, I think for him to be satisfied with a 390
says a lot.
Well, he has a 390 Duke also, the Gen 1. So quite clearly then, this kind of power, this kind of weight, this kind of performance is enough for most people.
There are a few other entry-level ADVs. One is the V-Storm, the 250.
Yes.
Now, there's one Honda one also, which is the NX200, if I'm not wrong. Now, these are not strictly, let's say, ADVs.
Yes.
Right? They're more like different ergonomics to a street bike. So they're mostly like city and, occasional very close weekend rides.
It's like a rear-wheel drive Thar. and why I say that is because there are people who want to have a bike which looks like an ADV.
Right.
They will perhaps never tour.
Right.
But when they go and park it in a parking lot and all that, they should have that. It's like the SUV factor.
Yeah.
Most of the SUVs sold in our country are either front-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive.
They're not, strictly speaking, they're not bad, but...
No, I'm not talking about bad.
But they just...
I'm not talking bad. No, it's nothing about bad. It's about your requirement.
Right.
When Mahindra did the rear-wheel drive Thar, it was like sacrilege. How can you do this?
But the amount it sells is
crazy.
It's not funny, actually. It's just insane, the amount of rear-wheel drive Thars
I think we should do this as a discussion in future podcast that most SUVs are two-wheel drive.
Yeah.
And why?
Right.
And the market scenario. But that's for another day. Do let us know if you want to hear about it and talk. You want us to talk about it. But coming back to the motorcycles, these bikes are essentially street bikes made to look like ADVs.
Right.
Right? So you will see mostly people putting up auxiliary lights and all those things and riding in the city.
I think it's a nice affordable entry point into maybe having a big ADV one day.
So if you, like say for example, if you have the Suzuki or the Honda, and that one day you suddenly think, acha, jana chahiye kya? Let's go to, Leopard Hill or let's head out to Lonavala today.
Right.
If that bug bites you, trust me, that bike will not be in your garage for too long.
True.
Or it will have a sibling very soon.
Especially given that Suzuki and Honda both have middleweights and bigger ADVs, which is And then it makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
But there are two other bikes I want to ask you about your opinion on them. One is the SD Adventure.
Okay.
And the other one is the Triumph Scrambler 400X. Two both very, you're sort of in this realm of, okay, this can kind of be my one bike where I can do a lot of stuff on it. The Scrambler is a little more, I feel, a little more elegant, and it's
Polished.
It's more polished, and it's got very nice sort of fit and finish and equipment on it. Yes, the Adventure feels a little more raw to me. Like when I've ridden it, they've launched a new one, which looks quite nice. But what are your thoughts on it? Like, what do you think?
So I think I was seeing some interviews by Anupam and the ESD leadership team. Their criteria of making a bike is different.
Yeah.
They don't want sophistication. They don't want things which are, let's say, glitzy, glamoury, things like that.
It's more raw, rugged.
They want a raw motorcycle which people will not think twice before taking anywhere.
Right.
And somewhere I agree.
Yeah.
I personally believe that the more electronics you punch into anything,
Yeah.
the more vulnerable you are.
Yeah.
Because India is a very different kind of country. The kind of dust, the kind of terrain we have is not similar to European circumstances. Right?
Not at all. Yeah.
So, one bit of canvas damaged is your bike stalling.
Right.
Right? So, the lesser the electronics, the better you will be.
For sure.
Right? Now, YSD is treading that path.
Right.
Okay? Is it a good thing to do? I don't think so. To sit where they are sitting, I mean, they've recently launched a new upgraded Adventure, which has headlamps which remind me of a BMW.
Yeah.
The fairing reminds me of a Ducati.
Yeah.
And the tail lights remind me of a Cagiva.
Yeah.
If you remember which bike I'm talking about.
It's
I think it is an opportunity getting out of hand.
yeah.
They have a lot of it.
Yeah.
Opportunity for them is excellent.
The amount of backing that they have in terms of
Their bike has to become modern in many ways.
Yeah.
Right?
Fair.
Like the engine, like the power, and most importantly, where YSD needs to work very, very hard is their service and sales experience.
For sure.
I mean, I was out there to return a BSA, the Gold Star,
Yeah.
and I was at their showroom.
That wasn't very pleasant. Yeah.
And I entered the showroom. I was there to return the bike. It was not my bike, it was one of their press vehicles.
Yeah.
And I entered the showroom and nobody came. Like I could have been a customer.
Quite bad, yeah. It's
You know?
quite poor.
It was like,
There have been many instances.
you know what it reminded me of? When I started all this journalism and all that, about 20 years back, I used to go to a Royal Enfield dealership with my old standard Bullet in Pune.
Oh, they didn't care at all. Yeah.
I got a feeling of that,
Yeah.
right? Now, when you are selling motorcycles like the Java, like the Adventure, like all these BSA Gold Star, the showroom experience is a big
Key.
thing,
Yeah.
right? I should be made to feel good because I'm willing to put my money into your product.
That trust needs to be
That trust needs to be there.
there. Fair.
I mean, most manufacturers got it very early. I think Hero is still trying to get it.
Yeah.
My experience at the Hero dealerships have not been the best.
Yeah.
But my experience at Royal Enfield dealerships have been better.
Right.
Is it something which I think could be improved? Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. But YSD was a completely different
Yeah. And
experience for me. I mean, it was like they are not interested.
Which is a
very bad thing
poor
for the
showing.
company.
That doesn't help. But on the flip side, if you look at something like the Scrambler, now the Scrambler and both the Speed 400.
You're talking about the Triumph.
For me, that is a very, very fascinating proposition because I've always had Enfields, similar to you. The Triumph brand name is the only other that sort of is evocative to me in that way. And then when I met the leadership from Bajaj and I'd spoken about the Bonneville 400 being an option. And he was very happy. He was like, that is something that even I want. Like that's a great move. But the Scrambler 400X is I would genuinely think about buying that bike because it looks great. It has capability. There's now more off-road friendly XC version of it. But what do you think of the Triumph, like the 400?
See, again, the first thing is that you have this brand value.
Right.
Okay. Now, that is not there with a lot of Indian brands.
Yeah.
Let me be brutally honest. You know, like when one of my very close friends was looking to buy a motorcycle in this middleweight category.
Right.
He was looking for 400s, and he's not a retro motorcycle that way fanatic at all.
Right.
I told him to buy the Maverick.
Right.
440.
Right.
Because I thought it was a nice motorcycle to have. And you know what he bought? He bought the Harley.
The X440.
Yes. And I told him that why didn't you buy the Maverick?
Yeah.
It was cheaper, your service is taken care of, everything is there.
Because it's a hero.
He said, yaar, hero ka to splendor hota hai yaar. And I said, boss, here is a company making one of the finest motorcycles in my books. The Extreme 250, the X-Pulse series, your this whole Zoom series of scooters, now the Zoom 160 coming. They are trying hard. But I think where they need to really work is brand value.
Yeah.
Their premium motorcycle business needs that little bit of push.
Yeah.
Where people don't just associate a hero with a splendor.
That I will.
Bhai, wo to bikega.
With the whole premier thing that they're doing, that should help.
That should help. And I hope people stop thinking hero and splendor only.
Right.
There's more to hero. They have a world-class facility at Jaipur. They are so good that a company like Harley Davidson built a bike in collaboration with them.
Absolutely.
And where most of the work was done by Hero at CIT.
Right.
So they have the capabilities. Their bikes are good. So don't think about the brand value alone. Just try out your bike and see if you like the bike.
Since we're on brand value, why don't we talk about some of the bigger ADVs that we have, which is a market that's sort of boomed in our country in recent times, and how?
Yes.
I mean, it starts with something like, you can talk about the GSs, we can talk about the Tigers, we can talk about the Multistradas. But any personal sort of favorite that you have, or where is it where you...
Listen, my first big ADV ride was many, many years back when Ducati launched the Multistrada. The Multistrada was a bike which saved Ducati.
Right.
If you know the little story behind the Multistrada, they decided to make a bike which would shape shift.
Right.
So it would be a Ducati on the road, but when you go off the road, it became a very different Ducati.
Right.
And they came up with the skyhook suspension, which would change the bike, right? Absolutely amazing motorcycle.
Yeah.
Even I'm talking about the Gen 1.
Yeah.
I went to Bilbao, Spain to ride that bike. And there were twisties and there were gravel and all these things. And again, coming back to my issue of not being so tall, they were very considerate. They gave me an Asian seat as compared to the European seat where I needed a ladder to climb up the bike.
Right.
So the only problem which I face and I think happens in India is the weight issue
Yeah.
and the service and parts availability.
Yeah, I mean the service is not cheap on these bikes.
Yes, you have to
It's
factor in a
incredible.
lot
Yeah.
of things. Like I'll tell you, someone we know very closely. You are also aware of him. Has a GS,
Right.
right? And he rides his GS.
Yeah.
His GS has done good 25, I think 25,000 kilometers. He's on the second set of tires. One fine day, I got a call from him that the tires were not available at the dealership.
Wow. Yeah.
And can you help? So we know this other chap in Delhi NCR. I called him up and I said, do you have tires for the GS? He said, yes, I want this tire. Is it manufactured recently? Is it old stock? So everything matched up and we got the tires.
Right.
But riding these bikes is an excellent experience as long as you are not riding them in the city.
Right. Right.
I have had the experience of riding a GS in peak Delhi traffic, and trust me,
It's not easy. Yeah,
it is a big deal. It is a big deal for someone like me of my height to negotiate traffic.
Right.
It's a bit troublesome.
Yeah.
But if I had to take a pick of among these big bikes, I would look past the three most famous ones, which is the Triumph Tiger, the
GS.
GS, BMW GS, and the what was the third one we were talking about? Sorry, the Multistrada, and walk straight past them
to Honda,
to the Africa Twin.
Yeah, the Africa Twin is a legend. I mean, it's
Abhinav, I have had the most sublime ride on Africa Twin.
Yeah.
That DCT is a game changer. I don't know why would I need a gearbox
Right.
when I'm riding around open highways.
Right.
A DCT takes care of everything.
Right.
And being a Honda, they had the technology also. They had a gravel mode,
Right.
That was a game changer. I still remember it was the Africa Twin first ride, and we were riding in Rajasthan. And would you believe it? There were floods in Rajasthan. And we were riding around a green patch, and we had to climb. There was a climb.
Right.
And people were trying to do whatnot. A lot of people fell. And I was just looking at it, ki yaar tang nahi tudana yaar. You can't do that.
Yeah.
So they had the instructor there. And I said, how is it that you can actually climb that? It was quite a vertical climb, gravel, grass, rocks, etc. And he just smiled and he looked at me and he said, trust the technology. I said, okay, what do I do? He said, hit that gravel button, open throttle, hold. Let the bike do it.
Its thing, yeah.
And I did it. And that bike did it so effortlessly.
Right.
When I climbed the top, trust me, there were way more capable riders than me on that
Day.
A lot of them fell.
Yeah.
I did not, because I trusted the technology.
Yeah.
If you have it, use it.
For sure.
Right? And that bike was amazing to ride.
I think Africa Twin sort of, in my head, lives in a sort of, even when it had those twin headlamps in the front, the older ones.
You get the heritage with an Africa Twin, Dakar and all those things.
For
You get the heritage with an Africa Twin. And no offense meant to the GS or the Tiger or thing. But it's not my choice. My choice will still be a Africa Twin. If I had to buy a big ADV.
Right.
For sure. But what will be your pick?
Honestly, I mean, I remember riding the Multistrada 950 long time back in Bombay, and I was just completely mesmerized by not only how it looks, but that speed factor when you do start riding it on the road, it really is like most other Ducatis. It will go fast. You can take corners very hard.
That is exactly what it was meant to
be.
do.
And it does that really, really well.
Flawlessly.
Very well. Even the GS. Now the GS is like this, in my head, is this technological marvel. It'll never let you fall sort of situation. Africa Twin is a little...
Well, I think that will happen very soon with gyroscopes and all that. So I will not be surprised. Yeah.
So I think if I had to really, really pick, I would probably pick the multi-star. I don't know. It just in my head that was something that was, I remember very fondly in my head. But there's been a lot of other sort of middle categories also from these bigger like Africa Twins and the full fat GS or Tiger. There's the Transalp.
Yes.
There is the V-Storm 800D. Again, very nice, very great, very good bike.
You remember the Triumph Tiger 660?
Yeah, it's still there. Yeah.
So the Tiger 660 we rode, and I was not like, come on. I mean, it's
more like it's a more road sort of focused thing. It's not something that I would actively think about taking somewhere far away. But we've covered sort of affordable ADVs, big ADVs. Now we have to pick one. Okay, we've already spoken about which big ADV we like. Now from an affordable ADV standpoint, let's talk about one that's a little more off-road focused, maybe something like a Enduro or something of that sort, and one ADV. Which one would you have?
Oh my God. I would... There's one motorcycle we haven't spoken about.
Oh, okay.
Which is the Kawasaki.
Yes. We often tend to forget Kawasaki.
Yeah, because...
Here in New Delhi.
Yes, because Kawasaki doesn't have motorcycles for us to ride in Delhi, and I don't remember when the last time I rode a Kawasaki, so I'm sorry folks, Kawasaki. Yeah, I can't help. But I had gone for their one of their international events. Yeah. Like it was a motor show and I was checking out their bike. They are also potent machines, right? Especially the dirts and all those things. The latest one which they have launched. KLX. Okay, it's frightfully KLX.
But it is
frightfully expensive.
Unbelievably expensive. I mean, for what it is.
It's something. Coming back to your question of which bike would I pick? I think I will gravitate towards one motorcycle.
Okay. One that does it all.
Yes.
Okay.
Because let's be honest, a lot of people don't have the luxury of having multi-bike garages.
Yeah.
So if you had to have one bike which you want to be able to go fast,
right?
You would go places. It's not a nightmare to handle in city traffic and all that. I think, and having ridden the 390 Adventure, I was very, very inclined towards that bike.
Right.
Okay, because I think that bike offers you everything that one would need. And I found a very comfortable spot on that motorcycle.
Right.
Although it's a big, massive motorcycle, I would say that it's easier to mount, ride than the Himalayan, the new one.
Agreed. Yeah.
But knowing the 390 Adventure, I would actually buy the Enduro.
Yeah.
Over the Adventure.
Yeah.
Because I can load up the Enduro.
Yeah.
As much as I can. Right? Put a saddlebag at the back and ride.
Right.
It has the same engine, roughly the same suspension.
Yeah.
And most importantly, it's lighter. If I drop it, it's not problematic.
It's a lot more manageable.
It's a lot more manageable.
So you would say that Enduro is that one bike that you would have from this class of off-roaders and ADVs?
ADVs, yes. Okay. Yes. I think that's enough.
Yeah.
And I would not buy the Adventure only because of its size and dimensions.
Fair enough. Fair point.
What would be your pick?
See, honestly, if I had to pick, let's say like a bike to mess around with, go off-road and...
No, your one bike on off-road adventure / whatever.
Okay, I'm just going to say this one, then I'm going to talk about that one bike that I can have. This one bike that I would want to have, which is like which we again haven't spoken about, but is coming in the future. We've booked it also. Which is the ultraviolet Shockwave.
Shockwave.
Now that is something that from the moment we all saw it, I think we were like, I would like to have this. That one mess around bike. That aside. If I had to pick one...
But can that be your single bike garage?
No. That's one bike I just want to have. Like just from like an off-road and like just messing about going here and there.
A want more than a need.
Yeah, a want. Okay. Like there's no sane reason why I would need one, but I just want one.
I want one because I can put it on the back of my Jimny.
Oh yeah.
And travel. You get these mounts where you can push your bike on top.
Imagine a Shockwave behind a Jimny.
We'll put your Shockwave on my Jimny and we can ride to Maldevta or some place like that.
But the one bike that I would have that would be sort of more...
Your one bike garage.
One bike garage.
On off-road, enduro.
It would be the KTM 250 Adventure. I'll tell you why. Because the 390 Adventure, great.
Have you ridden the 250 Adventure?
I haven't. But I know that for a fact, because I know that 250cc engine compared to the 390 engine. The 390 engine is a lot more... It's a lot more gruff. It has that, kick and all. But if you want to ride with a calm pace and mind and still have the power without, feeling gruff, I think that 250 Adventure...
And you save some money also.
You save some money also. It's got more sort of highway road-friendly tires. I don't mind because I will be touring more on it than, going off-road on it. I'd say the KTM 250 Adventure.
That's interesting. You're downsizing the engine, but...
yeah. Also, it's more fuel efficient, so... I go a little farther. So,
well,
I'm poor, man.
You need to fill up. You will get petrol pumps. You're not on your Shockwave that you will take hours to charge.
Shockwave is, it's just that, I eagerly wait. I've kept the screenshot of the booking on my desktop that it's always there. So I keep looking at it. Jesse, I switch on my laptop, the first thing I see is that booking. And I think
but unfortunately, I have not booked a Shockwave.
Oh.
I have booked something else.
Oh yeah, the Tesseract.
Yes, we are all ultraviolet customers. Ultraviolet, when are we having our motorcycles /
Please give them to us.
Please give them to us, and I don't know, I might end up buying a Shockwave also. I don't know.
You could.
Yeah, because it's what we saw on their launch. I think
looked incredible, yeah.
And especially now that I've said that the Jimny mount is possible.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense, like when I travel with my family and all. Of course, I can't take the bike along.
Yeah.
But at 118 kgs?
Yeah, it's quite light. Yeah, I'm not sure what the exact figure.
118 kgs.
It's nothing. Yeah.
I can stick it on the back of the Jimny, no problem, and ride it to wherever. Drive the car, take the family, park them there, ride the bike. That will be a fantastic thing to do, na?
But ADVs, where do we go from here now? Like,
electric ADVs? Electric Himalayan?
Yeah. Oh, yes. That is another thing that we must talk about.
Do you think the future is electric?
It very well could be. I mean, given...
Are you... What?
I mean, if you're talking about...
Traitor.
I'm talking about just off-road focused bike. First of all, that electric Himalayan, I've seen it.
I've seen it too, yes.
The Himalayan E or E Himalayan...
Himi.
Yeah,
well, it's not going to be Himi. If Siddharth Lal is to be believed, it's Flying Flea.
The Flying Flea, then again, that's a whole...
No, but the electric division is called Flying Flea.
Yeah.
So if it cannot be a Himi, it cannot be a Flying Flea Himi.
But it looked so significant, that bike. Like, it looked so sort of aspirational in that sense when I first saw it. And then, not very long ago, they put out pictures of the Himalayan 750 also.
Yes.
Now that is again a very tasty proposition.
Right.
Because that engine on an ADV...
But it's going to get heavier. It's going to get...
But it's a road to you sit on and you ride somewhere with great roads, which is exactly what India is now.
But they're testing it in Ladakh and all those places. Yeah, I mean,
That they'll have to. I mean,
वो तो Himalayan है तो जाएगा ही. मतलब वो तो.
It's in the name.
Yeah, you can't get away from that. But you think electric adventure bikes make sense?
I don't know. I would restrict it to something like a Shockwave, which is like a trail rider. You take it somewhere, you ride it, put it back on a car, and you take it back home.
Even if you put the biggest batteries, how much range are you going to extract? 300, 400 kilometers?
But then that if you put sort of range ahead, then performance is going to be.
I don't know how they are going to. It's like a bike which is stationed somewhere. Like say for example, like the tour operators you were talking about.
Right.
Like say for example, if you're going from Manali to Leh. Like a Himalayan electric will make so much sense,
yeah,
na?
That makes sense. For something like that, it would make a lot of sense.
Yeah. But if you are living in, say, Kerala and riding to Leh, I mean...
It's going to be very painful. Very painful.
Very painful.
But I think the ADV future looks bright.
I think the ADV future is the way to go.
Yeah.
And don't forget our friends at TVS.
Yes.
And BMW are working on the 450 GS and the 300 RTX.
Yes. Now that again, I feel given TVS's credentials might be a little more, more road focused. But time will tell.
We never know.
Yeah,
we never know. TVS engineers are on a different level. Yeah. We are all, whether it's the smallest bike they make or the biggest bike they make, TVS bikes have that
engineering,
something like a
extra
spark.
Yeah.
That little thing about TVS is something which I'm really waiting to ride the RTX.
Yeah.
I think that should be the one bike which
that should be exciting. Yeah,
and not to forget the F450 GS as well.
Oh, that is we saw the concept at
it's testing.
It's yeah. So again, that also looks, because having a 450 twin cylinder ADV feels like a very nice sort of.
And it's not
fit.
going to be built. It's going to be built by TVS, but not rebranded as TVS.
Yeah. So
and the good news. I was doing recently a story on this particular motorcycle on our website, and I realized something very interesting. Their head of design and everything, development of the GS, the 450. This guy has said that the production bike will be very close to the concept.
Yeah. And I hope it is because the concept looked very nice. It looked
coming
beautiful.
Back to the very point we started with. If you look at this segment, you will notice that middleweight ADVs are something which are a bigger rage right now across the world than these 1200s and big deals.
Right. I think that is the way. Again, what you spoke about in terms of weight and technology and price, people are starting to sort of gravitate towards slightly more manageable stuff because you also want to...
Makes more sense,
yeah,
right?
because you also want to ride it in the city.
So I've always thought about it. Is it just me who...
no, I don't.
Or is it people who are riding these big bikes also feeling the weight and the fact that...
I just think that it in off-roading requires lightness, hence things like the Jimny and all really work, especially in like if you go to Leh or Himachal, there are Jimnys everywhere. So that mantra of it being a light, manageable off-roader is the true essence of off-road. So I think that also translates into us wanting to, or most people wanting to gravitate towards smaller ADVs, which makes sense, I think.
Interesting. But would you really buy the KTM 250 Adventure or rather wait for the BMW or the TVS?
No, I'd buy the KTM 250 Adventure. I really would. That's a very fascinating proposition in my head. It might not be very, very quick and whatnot compared to the 390. I think it'll be close, but there's just something about that setup of a 250 with that sort of riding ergonomics, that look. KTM needs to have other colors. I get the
But you can
orange
always
thing.
wrap it. Or
I get the wrapping thing, but there needs to be other colors.
Orange.
There's white and there's orange. There can be a blue also, because the Dukes have some very interesting colors.
The new blue color is nice on the Duke.
So just put that on the ADV, please.
So I buy a Enduro, you buy a 250 Adventure.
Yes.
And we both buy KTMs.
Yes.
Oh, hell. But what would you buy? Why don't we ask our viewers?
Absolutely. Please tell us what kind of ADV
Let's start
would you?
by asking them whether they would prefer to buy an ADV over anything else.
Yeah.
And if they are willing to buy or they are looking out to buy an ADV, would they prefer a middleweight, or would they go for a big
full fat
1200?
Africa Twin
And go
GS.
tearing down the road and all that.
I mean, it's a matter of choice, but I think takers for that are slightly becoming lesser. I could be wrong, but that's just the feeling that I have.
Excellent. So that's about it for our episode of Connecting Rod. Let us know if you've connected with us on our discussion, and do leave a comment and tell us what else you want to hear from us about automotive and the automotive world. See you next time.